Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan Fitzgerald. I lecture music language at the University of Western Australia's Conservatorium of Music. In this video, we're going to talk about identifying intervals from notation. If you want to learn about recognizing intervals orally, my colleague Paul DeCinque has a great video on that, and you can find the link in the video description below. Intervals are the basic building blocks of tonal music. Everything that you play and everything that you hear is made up of intervals combined in various ways. Whether something sounds very stable or very unstable and needs to resolve is a direct result of the intervallic relationships between the pitches. So we can define an interval very simply as the distance between two pitches, and we can represent the distance with a number that shows how many pitch letter names separate them. That numerical label is called the generic name. For example, the pitches F and F in the first bar here, they span only one letter name, F. So this interval is called a unison. F to G in the second bar spans two letter names, so this is a second. F to A spans three letter names, F, G, A, so this is called a third, and so on. Chromatic alterations don't change the generic number. Here we have G to E flat. This spans six letter names, so it's a sixth. If we alter those pitches to G flat and E natural, it still spans six letter names, so it's still a sixth. G sharp to E sharp, still a sixth. Now let's have you try. See if you can work out the generic interval name for these six examples. Remember, we're looking for a number that reflects how many pitch letter names separate them, including the starting and ending pitch you've been given. Pause the video, and we'll go over the answers when you're back. The first example spans three letter names, F, G, A, so it's a third. The second example spans six letter names, A, B, C, D, E, F, so it's a sixth. The third example spans seven letter names, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, so it's a seventh, and so on. Take a moment to check your work. But that's not the end of the story. The generic interval name gives us some information, but it doesn't tell us exactly how those pitches sound. For example, C to G is a fifth, but I think we can agree it doesn't sound very much like the fifth C to G flat. C to G sounds very pure, while C to G flat sounds very dissonant and really wants to resolve. So we need to identify intervals by not only their generic name, but also their quality. We can divide interval quality into two main groups, and you can really hear the difference. In the first group, we have perfect consonances. These are your unisons, your octaves, your fourths, and your fifths. These are the most stable. They have a very neutral, very hollow sound. The second group is your major and minor intervals. This includes your major and minor thirds, major and minor sixths, and these we call imperfect consonances. These are less stable, and they help to move the music forward. And then we've got our major and minor seconds, major and minor sevenths. These are unstable dissonances. They create tension, and they require resolution to consonant intervals. When we combine the generic name, that is the number, and the quality, that's perfect, major or minor, we get an interval's specific size, and we know exactly how it sounds. We won't be dealing with augmented or diminished intervals just yet. For now, we're going to work just with intervals that are perfect, major, or minor. So there are two parts to an interval name, and let's use the C to G interval that I played a moment ago as an example. The quality is perfect, represented with a capital P. And the generic interval name, which we discussed earlier, is a fifth. It spans five letter names, C, D, E, F, G. So C to G is a perfect fifth. Now you're probably asking yourself, how do I know if an interval is perfect, major, or minor? Well, there are numerous methods for identifying interval quality, but the one we're going to talk about today uses your major and natural minor scales. As you can see here, a major scale has only perfect and major intervals above the tonic. A natural minor scale has perfect, minor, and one major interval above the tonic. An uppercase M designates a major interval, and a lowercase m designates a minor interval. Note that the intervals between the tonic and scale degrees 1, 4, 5, and 8 are always perfect in both scales, and this is indicated by a capital P. The labels major and minor are applied to the intervals of seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. Note that these intervals are major in the major scale and minor in the minor scale, with the exception of scale degree 2, which is major in both. So to sort out the size of a diatonic interval, just follow this simple two-step process. First, we need to determine the generic interval name. This is the number of letter names we discussed at the start of the video. Second, we need to determine the quality, and we'll do this by thinking of the lower pitch as the tonic and determining if the upper pitch is a member of its major or natural minor scale. So let's try this out with our C major and C natural minor scales first. If I'm given the pitches C and E flat, I know that they span 3 letter names, C, D, and E. So the generic interval is a third. Treating C as the tonic, E flat belongs to the C natural minor scale. So I know this is a minor third. If I'm given the pitches C and A, it spans 6 letter names, so the generic interval is a sixth. Treating C as the tonic, A belongs to the C major scale, not the C natural minor scale, so this is a major sixth. What about C to F? It spans 4 letter names, so it's a fourth. It belongs to both the C major and C natural minor scales, both of which have a perfect fourth between the tonic and scale degree 4, so C to F is a perfect fourth. The one wrinkle with this system is the second, which is a major interval in both C major and C minor scales. You may have noticed that the minor intervals are all 1 semitone lower than their major counterparts. For example, C to A is a major sixth, while C to A flat is a minor sixth. C to E is a major third, C to E flat is a minor third. You can turn any major interval into a minor interval by keeping the same letter name, but making the distance smaller by 1 semitone. So, if you're confronted with the pitches C to D flat doesn't fit in either the C major or C minor scales. However, C to D flat is a semitone lower than the major second C to D, and thus it is a minor second. So if you have 2 letter names that are 1 semitone apart, the interval is a minor second. Now let's try this starting with a pitch other than C. Here we have E to G sharp. We know it's a third because it spans 3 letter names, E, F, G. Now we determine the quality. Treating E as the tonic, G sharp belongs to the E major scale, not the E natural minor scale. So this is a major third. Here's another. We have D to A. We know it's a fifth because it spans 5 letter names, D, E, F, G, A. Treating D as the tonic, A belongs to the D major scale and the D minor scale. So this is a perfect fifth. Now it's your turn. Here are 6 examples for you to try. Remember, we need to follow 2 steps. First, determine the generic interval name. This is the number of letter names that the 2 pitches span. Second, determine the quality using scale membership. Pause the video and we'll show the answers when you resume. There is one more thing that we need to cover, and that's augmented and diminished intervals. We learned that minor intervals are one semitone lower than their major counterparts. We saw that C to A is a major sixth, C to A flat a minor sixth. What if we go one semitone smaller than minor? C to A double flat is called a diminished sixth. What if we go the opposite direction and make the major interval C to A one semitone larger? C to A sharp is an augmented sixth. This characteristic is true of major and minor intervals, seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. Diminished is one semitone smaller than minor, augmented one semitone larger than major. Perfect intervals, however, work a bit differently. If you increase the size of a perfect interval by one semitone, it becomes augmented. If you decrease the size of a perfect interval by one semitone, it becomes diminished. Perfect intervals can never become major or minor, and major or minor intervals can never become perfect. The augmented and diminished intervals you're going to see most commonly are the augmented fourth and the diminished fifth. So for the purposes of this video and your ATAR exam, we'll focus on just those two. Here's C to F sharp. The generic interval is a fourth, but the interval isn't perfect, and you can hear straight away it does not sound like a perfect fourth. So we return to our C major and C minor scales. F natural is the fourth note of a C major scale, not F sharp. So this is a semitone larger than perfect. It's an augmented fourth. What about C to G flat? The generic interval is a fifth, but we know that C to G is a perfect fifth. C to G flat is a semitone smaller than a perfect fifth, so this is a diminished fifth. If you're not confident with your major and minor scales, it is possible to sort out the quality by counting semitones, though I would use this method only as a last resort. It's much better to think of intervals in terms of their actual pitch relationships within a key. If you're not comfortable with your major and minor scales, let this be the motivation to get on top of them. But if you must, you can determine the generic number as we discussed, and then use this chart to determine the quality from the number of semitones. I hope this video has been helpful in your understanding of intervals and how to identify them. There are, of course, multiple methods for identifying intervals, so if your teacher has suggested something that works better for you, by all means use that method. If you'd like to learn how to write intervals both above and below a given note, check out the video link in the description below. There are many ways to study music at the UWA Conservatorium. You can do music as your first major, you can study something else as your first major, like physics or engineering, and do music as your second major, or you can just take music classes or participate in ensembles as electives or broadening units. For more information about music at UWA, find us on the web at music.uwa.edu.au, and good luck on your ATAR exams.